Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first session of the 10-part Water and Energy for Food Grand Challenge Learning Series. My name is Nikki DeBaroncelli, and I'm the Senior Manager for the Water and Energy for Food USAID unit of the Secretariat. After 6 years of groundbreaking work, securing water for food and powering agriculture grand challenges concluded this spring. This series of learning sessions features innovators, staff, and other stakeholders sharing their experiences with both programs, lessons learned from technical assistance facility, and recommendations to improve future water and energy and agriculture programming. Each session highlights a specific cross-cutting theme. For example, SWFF's experience with incorporating gender into technical assistance, how innovators developed based on pyramid business models, environmental monitoring, or PAEGC's experience in enabling environment improvement. The series will also discuss how the new program, Water and Energy for Food, will capitalize on securing water for food and powering agriculture PAEGC's learnings to ensure the best possible outcomes. We have a few housekeeping items to just tell you before we get started. This session is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Water and Energy for Food website and YouTube channel each Friday. There is a Q&A box on the right-hand side. You can submit your questions and comments in this Q&A box throughout the session, and we will answer them in the Q&A portion. You have the option of submitting your questions anonymously. Note that we may not be able to get to your questions or publish all questions, and we will upload detailed responses to the unanswered questions on our website within 2 weeks of the webinar. This session is in English. Simultaneous transcription in Arabic, French, German, Spanish, and Swahili is available, though please note that live closed captions uses basic software and is only intended to serve as a guide if needed. To turn on these live captions and subtitles, please select Caption Subtitles On using the closed caption icon in your video controls. To change the caption language, select the settings icon and then Captions and Subtitles to choose your preferred language. Written transcriptions will also be available after the event. And with all of that housekeeping, I'd like to finally introduce you to Ben Amick. He is an independent consultant and currently supports Water Energy for Food under the USAID Catalyst project implemented by Resonance. Previously, Ben worked closely with SWFF Innovators to develop the Innovator Guidebook, Navigating Business Models for Base of the Pyramid in Water Energy for Food, and most recently on the Water Energy for Food Ag Energy Prize. Take it away, Ben.
All right. Thank you very much, and very excited to be here today. My name is Ben Amick, and I've been working with innovators for a long time. And I love working with different innovators. Here's a few. Let me just flip to the next slide, please. So. Yeah, I've been doing this a long time, and I had a lot more brown hair back then too. And I would go to different, helping entrepreneurs connect with different villages to connect to products. The photo at the top there on the staircase is me with a bunch of entrepreneurs throughout the Asia Pacific area visiting the Facebook's headquarters after they won a prize. And I've facilitated numerous different prizes and challenges, including this most recent one that we'll be talking about today. And I'm joined very happily with Ms. Kathleen Doyle.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kathleen Doyle. I'm an Innovation and Enterprise Development Analyst with Resonance, and I've been working with Ben really closely on this prize since ideation almost a year ago now. So I'm really excited to be here and talk to you about our experience in supporting innovators in a post-COVID-19 world.
Thanks, Kathleen. So let's go through what we're going to do. Kathleen's going to give you an overview over the Ag Energy Asia Prize, kind of what we did, and then I'm going to jump over and say what happened after COVID hit and how we changed and what we learned from all that. We're going to pause there for a couple questions, and I think you might see a little icon at the bottom with a question mark in it. You can post questions there. I already see we already have a question, so that's great to see. And third, we're going to talk about how innovators are navigating the new normal. And fourth, what does this all mean looking ahead? And then we're going to finish with a good chunk for Q&A and discussion around this topic.
So I'll kick us off by giving an overview of the We4F Asia Edge Ag Energy Prize. So the ultimate purpose of this prize was to identify and support game-changing innovations at the nexus of renewable energy and agriculture in Southeast Asia. Ultimately, the prize had three main goals. One, to identify and fund promising innovators at the nexus of agriculture and energy. Two, to explore market activity about the nature, progress, and scale of small and growing businesses in this region. And finally, to improve awareness of We4F and Asia Edge development initiatives among the business community. The prize itself had two different categories: a mid-stage enterprises prize and a youth innovators prize for CEOs under 30. As you can see, we had a grand prize for each and two runners-up for the mid-stage and one for the youth. So ultimately, we were awarding 5 innovators a recognition prize. So this is our timeline, a PC-19 or a pre-COVID prize timeline. We launched the prize in 2019 with the plan to select 15 finalists, 10 for the mid-stage and 5 for the youth prize in February. And then we were going to bring all the innovators together for a co-creation workshop in Bangkok in March to really foster that peer-to-peer learning and start to build that community of innovators working at this unique nexus in Southeast Asia. The final judging period was to also take place in person at that co-creation workshop in Bangkok. And then finally, we were going to announce the winners at the Asia Clean Energy Forum in Manila, also having them be there in person. And the final step was that the winners would receive acceleration support from the South and Southeast Asia Hub when it came online in the summer. So our pre-COVID implementation experience really fell into 3 different categories. We had the pre-launch and then the launch, followed by the open application period, and finally our judging period in February. During this implementation, we had excellent collaboration with USAID, which really proved to be essential throughout the prize. And ultimately, this experience was going pretty smoothly. We were able to draft a handful of comms materials for the We4F website. We utilized a Google application form for the prize itself that worked really well. And we were able to recruit and orient a group of judges from a vast, varying degrees of backgrounds to be able to offer their unique perspective to the evaluation. But as you can imagine, a prize of this size or any project in general, you always run into a few challenges, and this was no different. So we definitely had some lessons learned from this pre-COVID experience. First was the holiday timing was not ideal, having that open application period from early December to end of January. It's a busy time for everybody, especially these small entrepreneurs who are running businesses with only a few employees. We also asked them to submit both a Google application form and a Lean Canvas business model. And although we think that the Lean Canvas is an excellent tool for innovators and entrepreneurs to have and utilize, asking them to submit the 2 separate documents for the application really was confusing and caused a lot of back and forth for the applicants. And ultimately, in the future, we would only have them submit 1 form for the application. And finally, our initial outreach strategy was through USAID channels. And when we came to the end of the open application period, we decided to extend it for 1 more week. And in that time, we totally adapted our outreach strategy. In 1 day, we reached out to 300 different organizations, accelerators, universities, and other stakeholders in the region. And we used Facebook advertising to really target the market we were looking for and meet innovators where they're at, we realized that these entrepreneurs are not necessarily following all of USAID channels, but they're all on Facebook, especially in Southeast Asia, using it to promote their own businesses, make connections, and network. So this strategy works really well, and we received numerous additional applications in that last week of the prize, which led to a lot of quality applications for our judges to evaluate and select our top 15 finalists.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. So we were prepared when everything was going really according to plan until, of course, COVID hit, and it really I think just had to rethink everything. And in very close collaboration with USAID, we said, look, we can still do this, we can still add value, we still want to help these innovators. And I was reminded by one of my favorite David Bowie songs that it's time to turn and face the strange. These are very unusual times. Let's see what we can do about it. Let's talk about this pivot, or how we changed the prize and how we did. At this time, remember March? March was crazy. And, you know, we were about halfway through implementation. SMEs, enterprises are really struggling as countries close to try to contain the virus. Food value chains are disrupted. And in talking with Dr. Koo and the We4F team, well, we said, look, we need innovators in the We4F Nexus more than ever. It's really time to experiment, to really uncover the value in this new operating canvas. We had a shift right away. We had to change our co-creation workshop from an in-person event to an in-person event. We moved it to May. Our final judging round also shifted to late May rather than being in person in Bangkok. And last, the awards ceremony, we still kept it to June at the Clean Asia Energy Forum. That changed to virtual, of course, too. And so we didn't lose, at the end of the day, we're still within our schedule. So what do we have to do? We said doing a virtual co-creation workshop is something that I have never done, even though I've facilitated numerous workshops, and We4F hasn't done before either. And so we said, look, let's put a pause on everything. We need to know what we need to do. Everything's changed. So we decided to survey the innovators, and we interviewed them as well. We wanted to rethink the format of the virtual event and the timing. Dr. Koo said something really awesome. He said, look, let's not let a crisis go underutilized. And I totally agree with this, because this was such a great time for us to experiment with new approaches that could help us even after the pandemic. You know, too, I love working with entrepreneurs because they're just the best. They're so much fun to work with because they're always open-minded and they're really open to testing something new. So they make great subjects. And last, again, we really collaborated so well with the We4F Secretariat and USAID throughout this that made it very easy to try something new. That was a little bit scary, to be honest with you. Here's us surveying one of the innovators, and he's at a fish market. And we wanted to know how to change our themes. Like, what do they actually care about now that COVID's hit? And they said, look, we really want to know how to integrate ESG into business operations to be more resilient. Obviously, everything's changed with our customer needs. How do we shift? How do we change to make sure we meet those needs? Investors, all of a sudden, were changing how they were looking at investing, and how do entrepreneurs think that through? And so we decided that was an important theme. Fourth, there might be we wanted to help entrepreneurs think through how to adapt value delivery, which is saying, are there new services or products that they need to change? And how do they go about doing that? And last, a lot of the entrepreneurs said, look, we need partnerships. Before, we could easily travel to another country or traveling with our own country, for example, and now we can't. How do we find partnerships to overcome some of these challenges that are hindering our business? So after we got all this great feedback from the surveys, we said, look, let's change the format. Instead of doing 5 8-hour days, we changed it to 90 minutes for 5 days in a row. We selected a video conference system. We ended up going with the Blue Jeans platform, which is wonderful. We thought about using Zoom. At the time, though, Zoom bombing was happening, and so there was a lot of USAID notices saying advising against it. We also developed an icy guide for everybody participating in this co-creation workshop, which was troubleshooting a device, things like, okay, look, if the BlueJeans platform isn't working, try just closing it and restarting it. It usually works then. And last, facilitator guides. These were extremely detailed, much more detailed than I would usually do for an in-person event. These were almost like minute-by-minute run of shows for all the organizers and people supporting it so that we could keep our transitions as seamless as possible and everybody knew what needed to be doing it. We had to adjust the content to meet the entrepreneurs' needs. We developed, we still had virtual breakout rooms and we had a digital booklet so everybody could read about the other participants in the room and follow the agenda and the content at any given time. We were able to leverage a lot of different guest speakers who didn't just present, but they joined us for the entire day and participated in unique ways. And we really focused on peer-to-peer exchange because we didn't want to because it's a virtual event, we wanted to use this exchange to really pull people into the discussion, engage them, and overcome some of that Zoom fatigue that they might have been feeling at that time. And features, we decided to try some new features. We use Miro. For those that you don't know Miro, it's like a virtual whiteboarding and sticky note type thing that we'll talk about later. We also did daily surveys to the participants because we've never done this before. And so we wanted constant feedback to make adjustments. So day one setup, was all about integrating ESG into operations. And I want you to get this is our basic agenda. We spent over about 25 minutes on opening remarks and introductions. We then went into a breakout group for 20 minutes. We came back, did a quick group activity for 10. We had a presentation after that for 10 minutes. And then we did another breakout group for 20 minutes. And then we finished with 5 minutes. So a lot of different transitions, as you can see here. Day one was not that good. I was very unhappy with myself. And my fellow and the participants and my colleagues agreed with me, as you can see in this data, where 5 is supposed to be an excellent session, right? And not many people agreed, and so there was a lot of areas for improvement. So what went wrong? Well, I tell you what, there's just too many sessions and transitions for a virtual event. We really suggest only 2 to 3. And if I had to do this over again, I would have done it. I would have had 2 hours instead of 90 minutes. And second, it really takes longer for people to engage in a virtual setting. We really learned how to pause and wait, be ready for long, awkward pauses. We also drew from all the stories we heard from our innovators during the surveying and the interviews we did. We would call on people to help pull them in. Third, the different breakout groups were way too complicated and scripted. Generally, I like to try to achieve a learning outcome like, hey, let's make a change to your business model and integrate ESG. It was too difficult. Instead, we shifted more to open-ended questions and flew out breakouts to more promote exchange and engagement with the entrepreneurs that were present. Fourth, ICT worked. I think we had people from about 10 different countries on the line at least, and it was okay. However, we did try to take this Mural Board and ask participants to try to do their own sticky notes and organize them. And while that's pretty easy to do in an in-person event, way too hard to do in a virtual setting. And we suggest really recommending on staff, facilitators, note takers, ICT support, comms, whatever you do, you want to make it as easy as possible for the participants to engage in the discussion. Day 2 setup, we used the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. And the day 2, ironically, was called adapting to shifting customer needs. And we had to adapt to our innovators' needs. And so we started the day with some music to get some group chat, get the energy up. We then went into 15 minutes of welcome back and warm-up activity. We have 10 minutes of talking at them by an expert. We did a virtual tea break, but people absolutely loved. Then, as you can see, the breakout group was 45 minutes, much longer, and we had 10 minutes of wrap up. This worked. As you can tell, people actually liked the session, and I could tell myself that I was actually adding value and helping these innovators. So we're really happy to see that these adjustments we made on the fly worked. On day 4, we found our stride. We got it figured out. So here was the basic approach. Again, we did music. We made welcome back very quick. We had an expert deliver a very interesting presentation for 17 minutes. The tea break we kept because people really liked getting to know their fellow entrepreneurs in other countries. The breakout group was the longest one yet at 55 minutes, and then we did a very quick wrap up for 5 minutes. What we learned throughout the week, folks loved hearing from experts. In the middle there's Stephen Landman. Steve's had run 17 businesses, brought a few to IPO. And Steve did a very informal presentation on how to navigate the new normal post-COVID. And we had a lot of time for Q&A with Steve. And then he stuck around, enjoyed all the different breakout groups, and also provided feedback at the end of the reflection session. So the entrepreneurs really like getting to know Steve and connect with them in different ways. It was one of the highest rated sessions. We did a lot of breakout groups, and here's an example of the Mural boards. Folks really liked the different breakout groups, and they liked to be able to compare and contrast what different groups were saying. I think each group had interesting findings that were unique that they could draw from, and a lot of participants said we went back to see the findings from each breakout group after the session was over to further learn and think about different ways that they can adjust their business models to help them continue to foster growth. One of the things I wish we'd done, we added the last day, but I wish I would have done throughout, is we had an open mic. So innovators had 5-7 minutes each, and they could elect to practice their pitch or just take Q&A or ask a question of peers and experts. A lot of them just said, look, they had a question about how to strengthen their business models, and they wanted to ask their peers. For example, in Cambodia, one entrepreneur said, hey, I really need help how to connect with agricultural cooperatives. I just don't know how to do it. And somebody raised their hand and said, hey, I know exactly who you should talk to. There's this one cooperative, and I know the person that's on their leadership, and you should connect with them, and they can help talk you through how you can perhaps introduce your product through their network. So I keep talking about this Mural board, and I just want to again show you it real quickly. Is again, every time you use Mural board in breakout groups, you got to have one note taker and one facilitator. Don't send the groups off by themselves. You need to have people involved in those rooms. Moving between rooms just doesn't work. It's too complicated from our experience. Again, I think we really found unique solutions to shared challenges, and people could see this after the event. So it was nice that it was something that existed in the cloud and people could keep going back to, and this really supported the reflection period. At the end of when we surveyed folks the following week, 73% of people said that Mural board was a useful tool. As you can, before the workshop even began, we had different days set up, and we organized it as much as we could. And this is what it looks like. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, put photos there. It's a really cool tool. Overall, participant feedback was quite excellent. As you can see, the week after, as people overall thought it was a really great workshop, and we were really happy to see this, because when we started this workshop, I think a lot of us had a lot of doubts how doing a virtual co-creation workshop was really going to work out. So we had to do a lot of adaptive management, but by the end, I think we got there. One thing I would probably have changed this graph just to show that it would have increased time per day. I think most people would agree with that. It's probably about 2 hours or so. The workshop was helpful to see that everyone was facing the same issues. I enjoyed listening to the creative ways and how others are approaching these challenges. This was a quote from one of the participants, and we were so happy to see this because this is the goal that we really wanted them to achieve. So we really want to make sure these entrepreneurs are building that community and talking through solutions to a lot of the challenges that are very unique within emerging markets and also particularly in the ag sector. I'm going to pause here for a couple questions. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to figure out this virtual Q&A thing. I think it looks like we're okay for questions now, but please do put your questions in that little Q&A box if you'd like to hear something later, and we can discuss at the end. So I'm going to turn it back over to Kathleen to give you a little bit update what happened after the co-creation workshop, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how innovators are navigating the new normal.
Thanks, Ben. So yeah, so we finished the co-creation workshop, and now we're at the last stage of our prize, which is the judging of the 15 finalists to decide who will be our 5 winners. So just like we adapted the co-creation workshop to be virtual, we also adapted our judging sessions to be virtual, and we learned a lot of lessons during this time. So we really relied on the successes of our first judging period and reoriented all the judges with an orientation session, providing them with extensive guidance on what the layout will be like, what the criteria is, and allowing them to ask questions in advance so they felt well prepped for the judging sessions. We also set the format so that the innovators would have really short 5 to 7 minutes to pitch their innovations. And then we had an extended period of time for the judges to ask questions so they could really get to the meat of what they wanted to know to evaluate these entrepreneurs against the criteria, but also learn about the market fit solutions and anything that they missed in that pitch. One thing that we learned here that ended up being really valuable was we ended up recording these pitch sessions and sent them back to the innovators to review what they had done and refine moving forward. They're really similar to what they would pitch to a potential investor or a future partnership opportunity. And so numerous innovators noted how valuable this was to be able to see their own pitch session. So following the virtual judging, we had Eddie, Amber, Tap Tackle, and all their colleagues there scored the innovators, and we finally had our winners. So our grand prize winners for the mid-stage enterprise prize was ATEC Biodigesters International, who operationally focused in Cambodia. And then Recyclo took home the grand prize for the youth innovators, and they operate in Myanmar. And our 3 runners up, we had GAM Power and Claro Energy from the mid stage, and then Agros from the youth prize, all operating in Myanmar as well. So obviously this is a planted pre-COVID picture, but we of course couldn't send our winners to the Asia Clean Energy Forum in Manila to announce them. But the We4F Hub put together a video which was then shared at the virtual event that talks about the prize and the winning organizations, and we'd be happy to share the link to that video with you following this presentation if you want to learn more about our winners. And I'll pass it back to Ben to talk about innovators navigating the new normal.
You know, we learned so much getting to know these innovators once the COVID hit, and it was really interesting. They're very open with us, and a few key things really came to the surface I'd like to highlight. One, it's really important that enterprises incorporate environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, into every part of their business. With COVID, it's more important to be resilient than ever so that you can withstand shocks. This really feeds into point number 2. We kept talking about, hey, look, as an entrepreneur, you can't be enamored with the California enterprise lifestyle, right? You got to be a camel, not a unicorn. You got to be all about perseverance. And resilience is what investors are looking for. Third, really knowing your customers, your allies, and your competitors, especially your customers and competitors, because it's not always a direct competition. You have to think of what are the existing alternatives and how are your customers changing with how COVID's hit. And that speaks to point number 4. Data is so important. You need to have those feedback loops and that data about your business growth. Investors want to be able to see a return on investment, for example, and a lot of times it's not just return on impact on business metrics, but social impacts too, as you're seeing an increase in social impact investing. 5th, entrepreneurs kept saying, look, we talked about it, like successful entrepreneurs that met with these up and coming innovators said, look, you got to be your own advocate. you might get a very exciting customer, but if it completely shifts your business model in a place that you're uncomfortable with, you got to advocate for yourself and also choose customers, partners, and investors in ways that's going to help you meet your vision for your enterprise. I'm going to again remind what I said, that as we did this as implementers of this prize, but Dr. Ku's point about never letting a crisis go underutilized was fully embraced by these entrepreneurs that were there. They were all looking for new ways of adding value to their customers, thinking of new services, new products, new ways to reach their customers, new market segments. And so I think, yes, the pandemic's been hard, but there are ways to change. And what's great about a lot of these smaller enterprises is that they're very adaptable and nimble and can quickly change. Sometimes, I mean, I would argue a lot of times they can move much faster than a larger company that's a little more set in its ways at times. Looking ahead, so what does this all mean? And this is going to feed into our discussion in case anybody has questions or would like to make any comments. I think we really thought that doing this prize and having to shift virtually was a lot more cost effective. We're in fact really able to use the leftover funds to do a whole new follow-up support contest to support two of the non-winners with developing explainer videos and providing social media marketing support. Second, we really thought that innovators learn from each other throughout doing this as a virtual event. And what was great about this is that we could accommodate their busy schedules. We could also pull in guest speakers who might not otherwise be able to travel to Bangkok, and that also includes like regional investors. So it worked. Like doing it virtually was able to promote that exchange and that amongst peers, amongst innovators, and amongst the ecosystem that we are looking for. Third, two winners are exploring a joint venture opportunity together, and I have a quote on that in a second. Fourth, the prize is helping these entrepreneurs continue to advance their investor discussions. When they win a prize, it provides some validation, and it helps kind of pick up that momentum for them to find private investment. Fifth, we really hope that this will help We4F get a head start in finding some of the up and coming and some of the best innovators within the We4F nexus in South and Southeast Asia. So when the pandemic is finally over, and I know in Southeast Asia it's gotten a lot better, still there's some challenges, but when we asked, hey, can virtual events add value in the future? The participants said, yes, they might be a great way to prepare for in-person events. And another quarter of the participants said it would be awesome to augment or follow up in-person events. Third, a quarter of people said, yeah, it's a great standalone opportunity. And fourth, and maybe most telling of all, not one person said, don't do virtual events, do in-person events. So I think this is going to shift how we look at assisting entrepreneurs in the future. Just to recap, how do we assist innovators virtually? Well, first, you got to bring the energy. It's hard doing this. I'm doing this from an office in Costa Rica, and it's, I don't have an audience to feed off of. Second, you got to adjust the format and the approach. What you did in person can't be easily replicated virtually. You got to rethink it and how people as an end user like to engage on a virtual setting through their computer or their smartphone. I think fostering peer-to-peer exchange is really important. You can't just be talking at them. You got to find ways to pull them in and get them in the discussion as quickly as possible so that they're engaged and actively participating. And you're competing with their email, with the news and everything else that's just one click away on their computer. Last, and probably most important of all, you really, these innovators and these participants, their needs are always changing. So you really have to customize the program to meet their needs. Just like how these entrepreneurs are customizing their services to meet the changing needs of their customers, we have to do the same thing to help these innovators to make sure we're adding the most value to help them. Thank you very much. It was great presenting on this topic, and love to hear any questions or comments from the group. I think we're going to turn off the deck now and just put on our video. And if you have any other questions or comments, we would love to hear it. Thank you for taking the time today.
Hi, Ben. So yeah, and Kathleen, thank you so much for a great presentation. So many great insights and recommendations for innovators and organizations that plan on leading virtual events. We do have a few questions. One thing that was asked is, one of the questions, do you have any strategies for selecting innovations or enterprises to help combat adverse effects of COVID-19? Are there any strategies or in terms of selection of innovations in this kind of post-COVID era?
I mean, for me, I think it's pre-COVID or post-COVID. You're looking at customer growth rates, and so I think there'd be a little more flexibility to say, look, we adapted we lost a lot of customers when COVID hit, but we adapted our services and products, and now we're seeing an exponential growth rate and the acquisition of new customers or pulling back existing customers. I think that that's really key to show that. To me, when you can show that you have a growing customer base, that provides validation that your solution is doing really well, and then that would entice me as somebody reviewing different innovations to take a closer look under the hood to see how well you're doing and to learn more about your business model.
Great, thank you. And then that actually takes me as a good segue into a question from Dr. Koo, as you mentioned in this presentation a bit. He asked, what is one thing or a couple things that you would suggest incubators and accelerators do to support early and mid-stage innovators during this COVID-19 pandemic?
That's a really good question. I think one is reaching out to investors within the region to understand what they're looking for and what their standards are for the types of investments. And then being able to take that knowledge and be able to bring that to their incubatees, the entrepreneurs, and say, look, this is the type of data that they might be looking for, this is the type of growth rates they're looking for, so that they can clearly provide the types of technical assistance that will help them get to the standards that investors are looking for. Similarly, I would strongly encourage these incubators, if possible, to also talk to key value chain players. So for example, in agriculture, you might talk to a big food and beverage company to understand what their challenges are within their value chain. For example, are they having a hard time with developing sustainable irrigation solutions or a hard time with post-harvest loss? And then knowing what those key challenges are within these big apex value chain partners might be a great way then to further encourage entrepreneurs to know where their services or products might have a lot of value add within the key value chains that they're trying to support.
Great, thank you. And let's see here, what's another question we can ask? Oh, this is a great question. During your co-creation with the Ag Energy Prize, where approximately in the business cycle were the innovators? Were they early stage? Were they SMEs, pre-revenue?
Yeah, that is a good question. Our youth innovators we were all about post-revenue type stage. I think some were just kind of approaching Series A, others were approaching Series B. We had a mix of kind of companies that have been around for a while versus kind of newly established enterprises. So it was a pretty wide mix, I would say, of different enterprises in that sense. I don't think we had we didn't have anybody there that was like Series B, like acquired a Series B term sheet and above. So they're for the mid-stage prize, they're very much mid-stage enterprises.
Great. Thanks for that. I think this is a good question, and I think we're all trying to learn this. But one of the questions is did you all have a strategy in terms of looking at innovations or picking innovations in some of these innovators who don't necessarily or are not literate in maybe IT or where kind of that virtual connection is harder, particularly in South Asia? Is that a conversation you all have had, and how to make sure we're reaching all those people in this kind of virtual reality now?
Yeah, as Kathleen mentioned, we changed our outreach strategy to go using Facebook ads and also through direct connecting through incubators and other people that have the right connections within the region to actually get people to apply. And so that was able to get, that was able to find a lot of entrepreneurs who are outside of those, like the usual suspects. I've done a lot of different prizes within the ag space over the years, and yes, I do see some of the same applicants over and over again. And I think what we did interesting about this prize was by going through these different outreach channels, we were able to pull other ones in. In terms of like overall capacity, I mean, we did have to do this in English, which might have been a barrier to an extent. But I think what made this prize unique compared to some prizes that might have been done in the past from a donor perspective was we were really focusing on viable businesses. So we didn't get too enamored with like the bells and whistles of fancy tech and ICT. We were more looking at who's got actual traction within these markets. And I think that's what we're looking for more than anything else, because I'm a big believer that if the solution is profitable, it also can be sustainable.
Great, thank you. I think we have one more question that we can answer as of right now. So I think you mentioned Series A and Series B. So one of the attendees was asking if you could maybe explain a little bit what you mean by Series A and Series B.
Yeah, it's just different investment levels. So generally, like when you're first getting your business, you're pre-revenue, or if you're very lucky, you're post-revenue, you're getting seed funding. And that's just to kind of get you to a point where your business is generating revenue. Series A is usually the first investment level. Within the SWFF nexus in Southeast Asia, a Series A investment term sheet, I would say is usually around $1 to $2 million based off my experience. I mean, although that can change depending on the type of investor. And then Series B is once you're really, you've grown a lot more, you have to get a return on that $1 to $2 million for the investor, and you might see a follow-up funding round where that might be a lot higher. And I think the Series B can really, the funding levels can really vary from 3 million to even 20 million, depending on the type of business model that you're looking at. So I think that's what I'm talking about when you look at these different types of investment.
Well, thanks, Ben. I think that related to this presentation, I think those are the questions we have for today. We have a few questions that are more hub specific, so I'm going to relay those to the hubs. But I think that's it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ben and Kathleen. I think this was so helpful in terms of being able to kind of share your experience and your insights. We will be seeing you, Ben, again, I think in another presentation in the coming week. So hopefully everyone on the line will be able to join us. Any last words of encouragement, wisdom, advice that you two would like to share with those on the line?
Kathleen?
I mean, as noted throughout this presentation, don't be afraid to experiment. We're in weird times, and there's a lot to do in the virtual environment that can really support innovators, entrepreneurs, etc. So yeah, use all the tools at your exposure and help out.
Yeah, I think that's a great closing mark. I can't have much to add. I just thank you all for the opportunity to talk with you today. I just want to see more and more exchange amongst us in this community to further find ways to navigate this. I don't have all the answers by any stretch of the imagination, and I really want to learn more from you. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And again, I wish I could talk to all you guys and see all of you, but I'm sure that we'll have a chance to engage through other opportunities as well. Thank you very much for taking the opportunity to listen to us and ask all those great questions.